Are we all about to become the picture of health?
It's been a long time since I've been to one of my favourite places in London, the Courtauld Gallery. The building has always been beautiful, with its spiral staircase and spacious galleries filled with one of the best collections of art in the country.
Bill Nighy having a stroll alone around the Courtauld Gallery back in 2023. It's never happened when I'm there. But Harriet, what's the story this week?
Well, the story this week is that for the first time, we've got a study that has suggested that looking at original works of art in an art gallery can be beneficial to your physical health. So there's been lots and lots and lots of studies over the years that have suggested that looking at art is really good for mental health. It can reduce stress, promote emotional well-being. But this study had like 50 people between the ages of 18 and 40, and half of them looked at original masterpieces in the Courtauld, and half of them looked at copies of those same pictures in a non-gallery environment. And the study found that viewing the original art in the context of a gallery had a positive impact on the immune system, the endocrine system, and the nervous system. So not only did art move people emotionally and reduce stress, but it also boosted the immune system and decreased the risk of certain diseases, like, for example, like heart disease and diabetes is linked to these inflammatory markers that was slightly reduced.
It's the anti-bacon.
It was so interesting because the people viewing the copies, there was a small reduction in stress hormone, but not nearly as much as viewing the originals in a gallery. But the other systems were not affected. So the researchers were genuinely really surprised at that. This is the first study of its kind, and the results have been incredibly surprising.
So, I mean, you're not a physician, but why do you think there would be any link to physical health? Is it just simply that mental health and physical health are connected? It is really the mental health benefits of art translating into physical health?
I really can't answer that. But I will say that the study seems to suggest that it's much more than that these inflammatory markers that are associated with heart disease and diabetes and also mental health issues like depression, that those inflammatory markers were massively affected by looking at this art in the proper context, which is very interesting because you would assume that looking at the copies would have had the same impact, but actually, even though there was a small impact on stress levels, although not nearly as much, it didn't have the same physical impact, even when accounting for intellectual levels and emotional health in general. So that's just not what you'd expect.
Makes sense to me on the level of that authenticity. I know when I'm looking at something that's authentic, it gives me a kind of a switch in my head that's like, God, this is old. No matter what it is, it's like, oh wow, this is 600 years old. That's incredible. And then the kind of environmental context of being in a museum, I can totally imagine breathing more slowly, kind of feeling much more calm, and that.
Well, also the feeling of it kind of being a treat. If you're enjoying yourself,
you're
doing something for yourself, aren't you?
And then also the social aspect of it. If you're going around a museum and you see other people and everyone's kind of quietly contemplating art, I feel there's an element of maybe you've got a bit of loneliness or social stress, and it's nice to be around other people that reflect on the same things that you like to reflect on, all of that stuff that is just a massive link between brain and body.
Skeptical is how I would define the look on your face, Felicity.
I think I haven't been to an art gallery. To my shame, I haven't been to an art gallery for quite a long time, but they can be very overcrowded, stressful places to be. Especially blockbuster exhibitions. Sometimes it's just filled, galleries are filled with people holding up phones,
get you to the gift shop,
taking selfies.
It's not the case in this study. There's only 50 of them in this study.
Well, that's why it's not a legitimate study, possibly, right?
There we go.
Well, it
is a legitimate study. Well, it's a control group.
It hasn't been peer-reviewed, though, has it? And it seems a bit, I don't know, it seems slightly wishy-washy. It also must depend on what art you're looking at, right? If I'm looking at a picture of The Scream or Guernica, Picasso's masterpiece about that, is that going to make me feel I feel so calm? It's just so great for my health and health. I don't know. I'm just posing it. I just don't always think that art galleries are these beautiful stress-free places where there's hardly any people and you can feel calm. I do think that there are a lot of art galleries where, you know, if you go into a room that no one else, there's nothing famous in that room, you can go in and be the only person there, and there's like, you know, it's a beautiful pocket of peace and, you know, tranquility. But lots of galleries do get horribly overcrowded, and lots of art is incredibly disturbing.
There's a bigger picture than just this study, though. Like, even though a lot of the evidence that viewing art is beneficial is not necessarily been in the past very scientifically rigorous, because there's no universal definition of what constitutes like a masterpiece. It is true that lots of countries around the world are increasingly turning to museums and art galleries as ways to promote well-being. Like, doctors in lots of countries are starting to prescribe visits for the elderly and for people with dementia and for people with depression. So it's a much bigger picture than just this study.
Do you think art is something that should be prescribed, Jamie? If further studies started backing this up, as Harriet was suggesting, is this something that people should actually be told to go and do, not just encouraged?
Yeah, so actually in Scotland, GPs do prescribe social prescription museum visits to help people with mental health and social isolation issues. You know, if this is proven, and obviously it comes with the caveats that Felicity was mentioning, it kind of does make sense. I mean, there's been a whole you know, we've done stuff, I think, actually on this podcast before about social prescription and about, you know, the pros and cons of treating some of the issues, mental health issues, that kind of thing. What else can they suggest that isn't just medication or things like that? I am for it in situations where it's part of a kind of holistic treatment of lots of different areas. I guess the question is about accessibility, right? You know, not everyone, I mean, me now, I don't live within an ability to go to the Courtauld or to the Tate. You know, it'll be once every, you know, few months, if that, 6 months, that I'll be in London. And then, so how many museums are there around the country? Are they getting the funding? Are young people being given the opportunities to go to that kind of stuff? Do people realise that it's there? All of those questions, you know, particularly like Felicity was saying about blockbuster shows, very difficult to get access to. There is an accessibility issue and question around art, particularly when it comes to young people and the kind of competition for young people's time and what they want to spend their time looking at.
Yeah, so I suppose that's why it's important, Felicity, to determine some of the questions you were asking, isn't it? Because if it turns out that actually similar benefits could be seen by attending a local gallery or your local theatre, or actually nothing cultural at all, going to the park, going to a coffee shop, it's actually about going out, seeing animals, who knows, then we don't want to be spending millions of pounds bussing young people down to the Tate Modern.
Well, I also don't love the idea that you should only go and see art because it's good for your health, because a survey has told you it's good for your health. Like, it would be great to get more people to go and see art just for art's sake, and not because it's been like prescribed by a doctor or something. And I do think I think increasingly over the years with funding cuts, you see that successive governments no longer really place any kind of importance on the arts, which is tragic, really. I do think there's, you know, the question of being able to, you know, invest more in local, you know, even Folkestone has its own local art gallery and local stuff going on here is really, really important. It's not just about going to the big shows in London. And it's also about, as we were saying, accessibility, particularly with young people. A lot of the times I think it's seen, you know, going to see fine art in the National Gallery or whatever is seen as this very like elite thing to do, like middle and upper class thing to do, you know, and listening opera. And for some people it's just seen as like boring and totally impenetrable and it doesn't mean anything and I'd rather be playing video games or whatever. And what you need is someone to, you know, accessibility, yes, but someone also to help translate it some of the time. And I was talking to my sister the other day, who's a teaching assistant up in Warwickshire, and she was saying that a lot of schools do encourage kids to, you know, they do go to the National Gallery, and the National Gallery is fantastic because they'll have someone who encourages the children to interact with the paintings and to help make sense of it. Because, you know, unless you have a good teacher or someone who can kind of like bridge the gap between a young person or someone who's not interested in art and what it can actually do, it's slightly pointless. You know, it's like Shakespeare at school. Lots of kids don't get Shakespeare until they have a fantastic teacher who can like elucidate it and bring it to life for them. And that's the sort of same thing with art. We have fantastic art up and down the country, not just in London, but especially when it comes to kids and young people, you need someone to help them enjoy it and help them reap the benefits of viewing it.
And finally, Harriet, this story comes at a time that's a bit tricky for a lot of galleries since Brexit, since the pandemic.
Yes. So, for example, the Tate galleries, and there are 4 of them. They're not all in London, by the way. They've had a 27% drop in visitor numbers since just before the pandemic. And the director is blaming Brexit and the pandemic because of even though the domestic visitor levels are almost at pre-COVID levels, the international levels have dropped significantly. So people blaming this very controversial rehang in 2023 aren't really accounting for that. So the Tate director is blaming Brexit because the European visitor numbers are down so much. Also, Chinese visitor numbers aren't back up to pre-COVID levels. But it's quite a nuanced picture because like National Gallery visitor numbers are also down massively from pre-pandemic levels. Royal Academy and also the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow, the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool. But the number of visitors to the British Museum and the Natural History Museum, which are 2 of the most visited places, like museums and galleries in the entire world, they're really up year on year and also higher than pre-pandemic levels. And like the Ashmolean in Oxford and the Fitzwilliam in Cambridge have also had record years with the blockbuster exhibitions. So it's kind of a broader picture because the whole sector is being hit by fewer international visitors and everything else we speak about all the time, like rising utility and service costs, the impact of inflation, cost of living crisis on consumer spending, and the decline in public funding. And also the abolition of tax-free shopping by the last Conservative government. We're now the only European country without tax-free shopping, so we're really losing market advantage there. So a lot of UK galleries are kind of lagging behind European and American and Chinese galleries on their struggle to regain visitors, and they have a relative lack of state and philanthropic funding. But that, I think, is not to say that they are not valued by the governments of the last 20 odd years. Like I think we haven't spoken about the fact that in 2001, all government-sponsored museums and galleries scrapped their entrance fees in the UK as part of this plan to broaden access to culture and heritage. And this programme was such a big success. Like visitor numbers absolutely shot up. And among young people, even more so, there was some increase in people from working class backgrounds, more so outside of London. There was also an increase in visitors of ethnic minorities, particularly in London. So there is this incredible cultural and artistic wealth on everyone's doorsteps in Britain, not just in London. I think the question is how to keep people interested as the world changes, and how particularly to encourage young people to feel as though this is something that's accessible to them, because like it can broaden horizons so much, particularly for young people, to see this kind of art. And it is much more important than just, it's partially beneficial to my emotional, mental, physical well-being in this brief and intangible way. Like we have this incredible cultural wealth in this country. And I think that is something that we should celebrate.
Okay, finally, best painting, gallery, photo, exhibition you've ever been to had an impact on you. Jamie?
I went to the Museum of Broken Relationships in Zagreb when I was 21. And
that sounds like a lyric from a song.
Yeah, going through a breakup. And it was just the best thing I've ever done.
Okay.
But not the best thing I've ever done. That's a lie. It's one of the good things. Some of the good things that I've done in my life included that.
Felicity?
I just got back from a holiday in West Sussex, and we visited Charleston, which is the house of Vanessa Bell, the artist, and her whole house is just like decorated incredibly with art, and it was wonderful to be there, but with 2 screaming toddlers who don't appreciate art, not so fun.
Harriet?
I think it's a tie between seeing the Guernica for the first time in Madrid and seeing Frida Kahlo's house in Mexico City.
Good choices. I mean, for me, it's always whoever does those dogs playing poker.